Hello, and welcome to Discover Your Calling. I'm Master Career Strategist and Parenting Consultant Ari Schaefer. And one of the schools of thought that I rely on really heavily is parenting with love and logic. And I have used this. Dr. Fay and I were chatting before we came on. I have been using this for, I don't even know, 30 something years, I think. And so I think it's an absolutely exceptional program. And so I am thrilled to be invited to be joined by Dr. Charles Fay, who is the president of the Love and Logic Institute. Dr. Fay has dedicated his life to empowering parents and educators with practical tools and techniques that foster healthy, respectful relationships with children. And I first got to know parenting with love and logic when I was a stressed out mom of two great kids, and the techniques made parenting far easier and helped my children feel confident and respected. But most of all, it laid the groundwork for an ongoing close relationship as they've moved into adulthood. And later, I started a nonprofit to help teen moms. And Dr. Fay came and spoke with them, and that was life-changing for all of them. I still hear from them from time to time, and they'll talk about just one or two of the techniques and utilizing that routinely and how it shifted their family pattern. So with respect and gratitude, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Charles Fay.
Oh, thank you, Ari. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So honored, and everybody listening, watching, is so thankful to be with you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just jump right in because I have people who are like, oh my gosh, I need answers. So we're going to hop right in. The first question is that power struggles are probably the biggest problem that my clients come to me with. It's their main thing when they're talking with me about, I'm like, what do you need? And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm locked in this awful power struggle. But it's not. I mean, it's with the kids, but a lot of times it's with their partners or other adults too, the in-laws or whatever, or an ex. So tell us a little bit more about power struggles and how we can navigate those more successfully.
Well, first of all, you can spot when you're in one. When the harder you work, the worse it gets. You have that feeling where, wow, the harder I work, the more I try to get this person to come along to my viewpoint, the more difficult it gets. And it's exhausting. I don't need to tell you that. So let's talk about, first of all, the bigger picture of why we tend to get pulled into those. Then we'll talk about how we can exit those or avoid those. And I'm thinking about a woman. She was a teacher and a mom, and she said, from Love and Logic, I learned that one of the reasons I was getting into power struggles with my students and with my kids at home was because I cared so much about their future. It was all about me caring so deeply about the quality of their life. And most of the power struggles we get into are related to our dreams for other people, our dreams for our relationship with them, right? And so what started happening, she said, was I started working so hard on their lives that honestly, I didn't realize it, but I was sending this message that they couldn't handle their own lives. See, when we start working really hard on changing other people, we know what happens, and we can slip into it so easily. She said, I had no idea that I was coming across that way, but all came out of my desire for things to go really well. And she said, it hit me over the head. It really did when you were talking. It was something that I already knew, but I had forgotten. And it was this: people need to make mistakes. Oh, that's a hard one to swallow, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
But we sit back and we think, oh my goodness, if we allow this to happen, the end of the world is going to happen. I can't allow this person to go off and do what I think they're going to do. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes we have to step in, and sometimes we even have to micromanage. I mean, that is definitely an option. Okay. But when we are trying to control, and how do we try to control? Okay. Sometimes we try to control people by giving them a lot of information about what they should do. Okay. And we think, oh, if they just have this information, they'll suddenly say, oh, wow, mom or honey, I really get it. I never thought about it that way, and they'll see the light, right? Or sometimes we try to control them by being extra nice to them. I mean, that is a form of control. Sometimes we think, oh, if I can just kind of shape their behavior by rewarding certain things, or being certain nice, over certain issues, and that'll gradually bring them in my direction. And the reality of it is that as soon as I step into the waters of wanting somebody to be different, I'm already in a power struggle.
Wow, like I'd never really thought of it that way. That's like mind blowing.
Well, and it's kind of intimidating to think about it. I mean, it is a different way of looking at it. But as soon as I have this idea that, well, this person would be better off if they were such and such, and I start thinking a lot about that and dwelling on that, the seeds are planted well in the soil towards growing a great power struggle. And so this lady said, when I came to the realization that every single person needs to control the destiny of their own life, and I have no control over that. I have influence over that, but I don't have control over it. That was when things changed. So let's talk about is versus control. Control is an illusion when it comes to human beings. I let a little pause go by there, right?
Yeah.
Let's let that a little soak into our eardrums a little bit. That control is an illusion when it comes to other human beings. I think most people don't believe that until they're 30 or 40 and they have their own kids and husbands or wives and work. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. But it really is an illusion, because the more we try to control somebody, the more the underlying message we send is you don't quite measure up. When we get that underlying message as human beings, what do? We fight back. It's all just a dance that happens kind of more or less automatically. And so what is influence? Where does our primary influence come from? It comes from relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
I've seen people be willing to walk through fire for somebody they loved and respected, and they respect them because they saw them walk the talk. Right? It's way more about our walk than it is about our talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've also seen people who've been willing to walk through fire for somebody, make some huge changes in their life, because that person was there for them when they made a poor decision and they blew it. And that person didn't abandon them.
Mm-hmm.
See, they were there for them. They were empathetic, but they also allowed that person to experience the natural consequences of their poor decision.
Right.
And so let's put this all together in some action steps. And we call these the 3 E's of love and logic. And those of you who are listening, watching, this is where you write things down. Okay. So the first E, it's a big capital letter E right on your piece of paper. And the first capital letter E stands for example. It is what we do. And so when we put most of our energy, this is an old lesson, but it's important. When we put most of our energy into what we do, how we're living our own lives, how we're taking good care of ourselves around other people, we become somebody that people want to emulate. When we put most of our energy into trying to make other people different, we become somebody that people want to avoid. And so that's the first step. So parents, when you're struggling with a difficult kid, doesn't matter if they're 2 or 42, One of the things we fall back on is we say to ourselves, I may not be able to control this directly, but I can influence. And the best way that I can influence this person is by being a light in their life, by taking really good care of myself so I can be loving with them, even if I disagree with them. So the first E is example. It's showing them what it looks like. The second E is experience. And what this means is allowing them to make mistakes and experience the consequences. See, we're circling right back around to that. And then the third E is empathy. So when they make those mistakes, and they're going to, we're empathetic. Now, see, our society, our culture has a real hard time understanding what empathy is. Yes. Some people confuse it with sympathy. Sympathy is, oh, you poor thing, that's so terrible. Here, what can I do to alleviate your pain? How can I fix this problem for you? It's the rescue model. It's the pity model. Empathy strengthens, but sympathy cripples. Now, the empathy instead is where we seek to understand how they're feeling. We show that we care, but we allow them to experience the consequences of their poor decision. Now, why? Well, obviously, we allow people to experience the consequences of their poor decisions so that they can learn. That's one reason. But there's another reason. When I can be very empathetic and allow somebody to live with their poor decision, what does it say to that person about how much I believe in them?
That they can figure it out.
You can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
So I just finished a book, and we can talk about that later. But finished a book looking at the results or the effects of helicopter parenting. Helicopter parenting is where we rescue as a compulsion. Okay. Sometimes we have to rescue as parents. Sometimes that's a really good thing to do when it's necessary. But compulsive rescuing parents are those people who bail their kids out of every single mistake they make, every single struggle the parent bails the kid out, right? And what we're seeing from many studies, scientific studies, is that is the best way to raise a chronically anxious and depressed person.
Wow.
Very strong correlation between helicopter parenting and people becoming, struggling with severe mental illness in the form of anxiety and depression. Think about it. I'm rescued constantly as a kid. Let's say I am. And I grow up thinking, well, if I needed to be rescued, I must need to be rescued. I must not be capable of handling this world that I'm going into. We don't want to do that with our kids.
Mm-mm.
We want to rescue when they're stepping off the sidewalk in front of a car. Good time to rescue, right? I mean, really good time to rescue. Really good time to yell at them. Really good time to yank on their arm, pull them back up on the sidewalk. Yeah, that's a good time to rescue. When life and limb is in danger, but the rest of the time we want to allow them to live with it. And write this down, if you would, friends, as you listen. First of all, the 3 E's of love and logic. I want you to have these notes. First E, example. Second E is experience. Third E is empathy, right? Allowing them to experience those consequences. But write this down. What do you think you're going to do? Just write that down. Just humor me here. What do you think you're going to do? See, this lady who was talking with me, the one who was having so many power struggles, she said, I started experimenting in my own mind with allowing the people around me to make what I thought were some poor decisions. And she said, what irritated me about a lot of the things they did was that they weren't poor decisions. I just thought they were. Okay, so I was humbled a little bit. She said, but when they get themselves in a jam or they'd have a problem, instead of me jumping to the rescue, I just got really good at saying, oh, no, this is hard. What do you think you're going to do?
I like it. That's great. And I'm sure that probably, helps those relationships be stronger rather than jumping in and telling them what to do or telling them what you think they should do.
Well, here's the problem, Ari, is it makes a relationship stronger in the long term. In the short term, it irritates people to no end because they want you to fix it in the short term. And when they hear, what do you think you're going to do? That's upsetting to people. I say, well, I'm asking you, you need to solve this for me. And so let's go into this with our eyes wide open. Okay. In the short term, people are not going to pat us on the back and say, wow, thanks for the empowerment. Thanks for helping me be a strong person. No, there's going to be some pushback, but it's the right thing to do because in the long term, it builds those strong people and strong relationships.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I needed to hear that again. Thank you. It's one of those things I think that as human beings, we tend to, want to jump in and help and rescue. I think that there's something in us that feels good, to do that, but being reminded about, helping people to make their own best decisions is so great because my solutions are not necessarily right for everybody. I know that that's like, shocking, but it's true. It's like, but if I can help you to think it through and come up with your best solutions, that's going to be the right answer.
That's right. And the best solution to any problem resides within the skin of that person who has the problem. And sometimes we need to plant little seeds, though. Sometimes we need to provide suggestions, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah, I like the whole approach of asking the person, well, what do you think you're going to do? And of course, they'll often say, I don't know. Well, would you like to hear some ideas? Would you like to hear what some other people have decided to do? And it reminds me of a dad who the son calls up and said, I need $18,000. That's a discussion starter right there, right? And kid's older, an adult, and dad says he's practicing. He says, "Oh, that's got to be rough to need $18,000. It's well, what are you going to do, son? Well, I need a. They're going to take my truck. If I don't get it paid for, they're going to repossess it. Oh, that's a problem. Now, what am I supposed to do? Well, would you like to hear some ideas?" He says, "What?" Now, dad gives him an idea. And the first idea you give isn't always a great one. It might sound like this. Well, some people, and use that language. And by the way, my phone's ringing. I'm so sorry. Probably somebody trying to get me to solve a problem. But anyway, okay. So anyway, dad says, would you like to hear some ideas? And the kid says, what? Dad does something really brilliant. He gives him a bad idea. I mean, the first idea you give somebody ought to be one that isn't that great. It makes them feel smarter and it gives them a chance to do a little thinking. So dad says, well, some people decide, I don't know, I guess to go and see if, the bank will give them another try. How would that work? No, that's a terrible idea. They don't do that kind of stuff. They don't even care. All they want is money. Dad doesn't add any commentary to that. As well, some people decide that they're going to talk to their friends, and see if anybody would, be. Oh no, I've already. Nobody cares, and none of my friends have any money. Oh, that's not good. That was another not so great idea. By the way, your ideas don't have to be that great, right? I mean, they really don't. You might throw in one good idea, right? And he says, well, only other idea I can think of, son, is some people decide to kind of reframe in their mind that, well, this is a learning experience and it doesn't, mean that they're bad people or anything, but that they decide to get a bus pass and they start working on getting, earning some money to get a older car. Oh, that's a terrible. And you've seen the people that, the kid just goes off, So dad just feels horrible. He hangs up, the kid hangs up on him, and dad's thinking, oh, I just blew that whole thing, And well, time went by, and the kid ended up riding the bus because the truck got taken away. But a strange thing started happening inside of that kid's head. He started to develop a strange notion that maybe I'm the one that needs to own the consequences of my decisions.
Mhm.
And maybe every single decision I have, by extension, logic is maybe every single decision I make has a consequence, has an impact. And see, Dad said as time went by, their relationship improved, but it got real rocky in the short term because what Dad had to do is, in a very loving way, establish a boundary. Okay, now here's the boundary. And the boundary comes from this line of thought: I'm never truly helping anybody when I am consistently working harder on their problems than they are.
That's big. I mean, that's really big, and I think we fall into that as parents.
Well, let's back up. Let's say that again. It's, too many of these podcasts, people go too quick. They just let's just sink into our brains. I'm never helping somebody else, truly helping somebody else, when I am consistently working harder on their problems than they are.
That's a good one to write down.
Can you apply that at work?
Oh yeah,
Can you apply that?
absolutely.
Can you apply that with a spouse?
Yes.
Can you apply that with your kids? I mean, that's probably right at the top of the most important management leadership skills that CEOs of Fortune 500 companies absolutely need to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole idea, and I think we ought to be imagining as parents, as everybody, in any role we play, that we are a high level leader. And what a high level leader always remembers is their absolute job is to empower people so that they do not need them.
Wow. And that's so it's critical in everything, but when we think about parenting, it's super critical because you want your kids to leave your house someday.
Yeah. And you want to have a relationship with them based on love and freedom.
Yes.
A needy relationship is never based on love and freedom. It's based on resentment and a feeling of being tied to a massive ball and chain. Not good.
Right. And I deal with a lot of parents who have children that have that failure to launch thing. And we
Right.
talk a lot about hostile dependence.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
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 It's I'm dependent on my parents, but I hate that because I want to be free. I want to feel independent. And now I am hostile towards them and the idea that I can't move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And they feel really stuck.
So, in order to cure hostile dependence, we need to have a season of hostile independence.
Tell me more. Tell me more about that.
Well, that is when we cut the cord when we have to, right? And that means being fairly forceful in saying, you're more than welcome to live here as long as, number one, it's always fun for me. Your job is to make it joyful for me to be in this home. Right. Mm-hmm. And that means that you are doing your fair share of work around here and that you're pleasant to be around and that I don't have to worry about parties happening when I'm not here and things like that. I'm more than happy to have you here as long as that's the case. Number two, I'm more than happy to have you here and come in close here. I'm more than happy to have you here as long as I am seeing you taking the steps in order to grow in independence.
Yes. Yes. I like that. And it kind of brings me to one of the questions that I run into when I'm working with parents who have older kids and they have not done that 4-step program that we'll talk about in a minute, the 4 steps to responsibility. They haven't done that when the kids were little. And now their kids are older and facing these huge consequences. And they're like, well, now I have to rescue them because they can't stay in jail overnight, or they can't get kicked out of school, or they can't whatever. And I'm like, I know this is going to be really painful. But so how do you help parents who have maybe teenagers or kids that have, that are older and they've rescued them all their life. And now they're either going to continue to do that and the cost is going to get higher and higher and higher, or they're going to cut it and the kid is going to experience some real pain.
Well, one of the first things I counsel them on is that your brain, I'm going to say that to them. I'm going to say your brain, if you're like every other person on the planet, is going to do whatever it can to maintain the status quo. That's what brains do. They don't like change, right? That's what our hearts often do. I know in my part of my brain, this little bit over here, I know that I need to set these limits and allow this kid to struggle, and it may be a big struggle. I know that, but the rest of me is going to look for every single reason to stay right where I am right now. Okay, so just know that. And the truth of it is, there's going to be other people, there's going to be extended family that are going to do the same thing to you. So you're going to feel a lot of pressure to stay the same. You're going to find yourself going back to that same old place that is not good. And so recognizing that is really the first step, because you can say to yourself, okay, I recognize you, that part of me that doesn't want to change. I recognize this part of the world, my environment, that doesn't want me to grow and be stronger. I recognize you, and I choose not to listen to you.
So it's going to be uncomfortable for the kid, but it's going to be uncomfortable for the parents as well.
Extremely uncomfortable for everybody involved. But isn't that a basic truth about making any sort of positive change?
Yeah,
that it requires sacrifice. It requires walking away from something that you know is sick, but it's familiar.
Mm-hmm. Oh, can you say that again?
It requires walking away from an environment that you know is sick, a situation you know is sick, it's ill, but it's known, it's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when we too quickly coach people just to rip the Band-Aid off before thinking through that and processing that, then the odds are very high that they're going to relapse.
Yes.
And so again, I'm a big fan of going into these situations with the truth known, because the truth will help you be free. This truth will set you free. And because you'll recognize what the truth is versus the lie.
Mm-hmm.
The lie is, well, I can make this work if I just stay here. I'll just try a little harder. I don't need to go to this extreme to make things better. I can just stay where I'm at. That's the lie. No, many times we have to make some pretty significant changes that are incredibly uncomfortable. So that's really the first step. The second step is recognizing that the kid is going to go through that as well. They're genuinely going to experience pain. And see, the thing about it, really good parents, is they are programmed, and they should be, to avoid causing their children pain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what a good parent does most of the time, except for when, after a very thoughtful cost-benefit analysis, we realize that this pain that I'm going to impose, and I'm going to consciously, purposefully impose some short-term pain for this kid, when I know that will save their life, I'm willing to do it.
Right.
Example, I have 3 boys. Having 3 boys means that you need a lot of Band-Aids and need to be ready for emergency room visits at any time. I mean, we lived out in the country. One of my boys, who's, by the way, in engineering school now, he loves to see how things work and build things. He decided he would go out in the garage one day and saw open a D-cell battery, just to see how, they're just kind of curious about what it, I mean, before you judge me too much, how many of you have ever had your kids sneak off and do stupid things? Okay. I'll just, push back a little bit for those of you who might have judging hearts, right? So he's out there, gets acid in his eyes. Okay. So he runs in the house. I put him in the bathtub. I'm pouring water in his eyes. He's screaming. He's fighting me every step of the way. He's screaming. He's going crazy. That hurts so bad. Dad, stop. And I said, no, I'm not going to stop it, because if you want to see anymore, you're going to have me do this to you.
Yeah. And
we were able, by the grace of God, to save his vision. He didn't have any damage.
That's fantastic news. Terrifying.
Yeah. And then that I remember that evening, I ate an entire half gallon of ice cream. I think it had the kind with the fudge and vanilla mix, and then I put extra syrup on the top. That was my coping strategy. But it's hard.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So a little metaphor there. So that's what we're going to be facing. So we get ourselves ready. The choice is short-term pain to save their life, their emotional life, sometimes their physical life. Because let me tell you, friends, I mean, if we want to get blunt here, continue to rescue our kids can very well end their emotional lives or their actual lives.
Say more about that.
Well, first of all, we know that when we rescue people, when we rescue our kids, when people are chronically rescued, when they're chronically allowed to stay in a place where they are making poor decisions and they're being rescued from the real consequences of their poor decisions, they live in fear. Oh, man. Can I really handle life unmuted? Can I really handle life unmuted? What I mean is life unmuted means real life.
Mm-hmm.
And see, entitlement or hostile dependency is a golden cage. So, and a golden cage is full of padded furniture, that it's really small, and this whole world outside of it. And it's fearful to leave because you're just not sure if you can handle it outside of that cage, outside of that warm, comfortable material that you're sitting on. You look out there, but the more you look out there, the more you yearn for it, because human beings were created to be free.
Mm-hmm.
They were created to be empowered. They were created to have purpose and to do great things in their lives. And you look out there and you see it, but you can't have it. It's comfortable in there, though, but you'll die if you stay in there, because we know that when human beings are constrained in such a fashion, they'll either die physically, definitely die emotionally. A life without challenge and risk and purpose, not a life worth living. Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death, right? That's how desperately we yearn for liberty. But when we're afraid of that liberty, when we're afraid of that freedom and that accountability, it's torture.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that to your kids.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Wow. And it's worth the having to rinse their eyes out with water when they've got battery acid in there, whatever the situation it is, just, doing that. And that kind of brings me to the next question, is the 4 steps to responsibility. And these can start how early? As I learned, as early as 18 months. Is that still true?
Well, I would say, and this comes from Dr. Foster Cline, the great psychiatrist who helped start the Love and Logic approach many years ago. He said, we can start allowing kids to experience accountability as soon as they're old enough to spit beats across the hide share. So what does this look like? Well, so the first step to responsibility, and let's add freedom and good self-concept. Responsibility, freedom, good self-concept, all mixed together in this wonderful batch. Here, so the first step for that is that we give kids an opportunity to exercise some responsibility. We give them a task they can handle. With a little one, it might be actually swallowing this baby food that we're steering into their cute little mouths with the spoon. We got the little airplane, it's swooping in for a landing, right? And here come the beats, right? They go in the mouth, right? So first step is we give them that task. Second step is we hope and pray they blow it. Okay. Why do we hope and pray people make mistakes? So they can learn, right? So they can learn that they're capable of handling mistakes also. So we're kind of hoping that those beats will get spit, right? So let's say we got him in there, and the little one gets a little twinkle in his eye, and he spits those beats right out at us. And so the third step is we let empathy and logical consequences do the teaching. So what does it look like a little kid spits beats at you? Well, first of all, what that says is they're not really that hungry. Okay. Excuse me. So we empathize. Oh, that's sad. Breakfast over, dinner's over. And then we gently just put them in their down in their playpen or down on the soft, warm carpet. And so the meal's over, and we're just giving them an opportunity to not have our undivided attention. And a lot of times they're not very upset about it. But what that does is it says, okay, listen to this message, friends. It says, mom or dad, they're going to take good care of themselves. Okay. They're not going to let me spit all over them. Okay. And when I spit, things happen. There's cause and effect that happens. Okay. They're not mean. They're not angry, but they're not going to get in a fight with me over me eating my beets. They're just going to allow the logical consequences to happen. And now the last step, the fourth step to responsibility is we try it again. So there's a little time goes by, and now it's meal time again. And doesn't have to be that long. Shouldn't be with a real little kid, but here we go. We are guiding it in again, right? Here come the beats. And again, we're still hoping that they'll make another mistake, because this is how people learn. I mean, how many of you have learned to make good decisions the first go around? I haven't. Takes me a long time, right? So let's look at a preteen and how the 4 steps to responsibility might, what they'd look like with a preteen. And that is, we decide that this kid, it would be good if they learned how to be responsible about how to use appropriately an electronic device. Now, truth is, they're going to have those, right? So we want them to learn how to use them well. Okay, so the first step is we might give them access to it. I remember we bought our youngest son, who's now an adult, a very inexpensive little tablet. And I remember my wife and we said, "Oh, Cody, we just want you to be able to use this, and you're welcome to have it as long as we have absolutely no problems with you following the rules about having it." We had a number of rules, things like you can't have it in your bedroom, you have to give it to us at night. We get to see everything that you're doing on it. No social media. It was locked down pretty tight. Okay, and so the second step is what? Well, well, he started playing some games, and they were innocent enough, but he was sneaky about how much time he was spending, and oh, Dad, I have to go to the bathroom. And then he'd be in there for forever. I'm like, no, it's not. I know exactly what he has in there. So step 3. I bet listeners, viewers know what's going to happen here. A lot of empathy, sadness. Oh, it's not working well. Here's the problems we're having, son, and so it's going to need to go away. And of course, we're not congratulated by the kid when this happens. They don't get thrilled about what we've just done. But yeah, empathy, then the consequence. Then it was probably 2-3 weeks later, we tried it again. And guess what happened? He kept blowing it. Yeah. Can you believe that? Right?
Shocking.
Yeah. And so I remember I just decided this is going to take a lot more frontal cortex development for him before he's ready for this. And I put it away somewhere. I think I hid it somewhere. And I forgot about it. I think I found it years later, and then I remembered. But this whole thing is not so sanitized, right? Like this whole process is it doesn't always operate the way that we envision it working out. But the miraculous thing was that as a result of that experience and many other experiences with the process, those 4 steps, give them the task, hope they blow it, let empathy and consequences do the teaching, try it again. Lots of experiences, a culture of that in the home. He became a kid that understands that choices matter.
Right. And, the thing that I learned in my love and logic class that was so valuable was that, we talked about it. I had Barry Ebert was my teacher, who I just fantastic person. And what I learned was that I don't want my kids when they're teenagers to think mom's going to kill me if I ... I want them to think, is this a good decision for me? What will happen to me? And what will I need? What will be my responsibilities if I make this decision?
Yeah. See, there's 2 ways this can go. And it all hinges on our ability to grab a hold of ourselves and be empathetic rather than angry.
That is so tough. Yeah.
Well, it is.
That's really hard.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And see, the reason it's so important though is do I want my kids to walk around thinking, man, if I take this pill from this friend gives me, if I take this pill, man, if my mom finds out, my dad finds out, they're going to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want them to think that, or do I want them to think, if I take this pill, I don't know what's in it. Maybe that's this fentanyl is going to kill me. Or which one do I want them to be concerned about?
Right.
And see, when we get angry, it makes it all about us. And see, it's interesting because the kids who have parents who discipline with anger, oftentimes learn to lead a double life. Man, do they look good. They're the kids that they look great. They dress nice. They yes, sir, no, ma'am, this whole nonsense. But, their character is about as deep as the kiddie pool. You don't want to dive into that. You're going to break your neck, right? That is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'd rather have kids. You know which kids I'd rather have? I'd rather have kids that look kind of messy. Yeah.
I like that.
I'd rather have kids where, I can sit down with my friend. Hey, how's it going with your kids? Oh, geez. I love him, man. He's going to have a PhD in wisdom pretty soon. He's making enough mistakes for all of us here. Guess what he did? I'd rather have a kid like that. Because I know what's going on. They know what's going on. And they're developing a sense of character and humility rather than this sense of, I need to create a veneer image that I present to the rest of the world to manipulate people into letting me do what I really want to do. The truth is that we all want those humble, kind, uh, flawed kids who desire to love other people and be responsible. That's the picture. That's the kind of kid I want. I think you want those. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the people that you talk with, it's, that's what they want. Those are we talk a lot when I'm working with people about what are the values you want your child to leave home with.
Right.
Let's talk about that. Because of course, it's important that they know how to take care of themselves and do their laundry and cook and all of those kinds of things. But what are the values that do you want them to base their life on? And how can
Yeah.
you help to, be an example of that?
Well, right. And so are you asking me?
Yeah. Yes, that would be great.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. I'm honored that you would ask. I would have to say that humility is right at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
So it's humility is this sense that, yeah, I'm not perfect, never will be, don't have to be.
Yeah. That
And
last piece is, I think, the most important. Don't have to.
yeah. And see, when that is absent, when people struggle with this fear that they won't measure up, they fill that hole with so many noxious habits, materialism, drug use, arrogance, or hiding from any sort of challenge. See the beauty of being secure in humility, the beauty of having kids who know that they're not perfect, they don't have to be, they never will be, right? But they don't have to be. The whole idea is that they are able to take risks. They're able to fail. So that is one of the correlates, I should say, of that humility is that willingness to take risks, make mistakes, and to fail. Because how in the world, friends, do we ever achieve anything great if we are not willing to make mistakes?
And I think that that's something not only in parenting, but I think that that's huge in business and for managers, because it's like there's this whole culture of, it has to be done perfectly, it has to be done right. You can't admit when you've made mistakes. And the companies that I see doing the best are the ones where they have this culture where people come in and talk about their biggest failures and what they learned.
Yeah, failure is not final, it's informative.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something you might want to write down. Failure is not final; it's informative. See, when we see our mistakes, our quote unquote failures as data, they're just information.
Mm-hmm.
See, one of my sons was a very good pitcher, pitched at a fairly high level for quite a while, and one of his pitching coaches would always remind him that when you're starting, when let's say you walk a batter, that's information. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the guy you hung that curveball and now it's over the fence in another zip code. That's just information.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, you can think about it that way. See, what's going to happen is your brain is going to fill in the gaps you're going to learn from. But if you catastrophize over it, then no, learning's over.
Right.
So the value of humility, it really, so many things extend out from that. Honesty, right? When people are humble, they don't have to hide things from other people, right? They're more likely to be honest. So of course we want honesty. We want this sense of responsibility. We want kids who value people more than stuff. I mean, that's so important. So again, let's circle back. How do we make this happen? So much of it comes down to who are we?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we talking about within earshot of them?
Oh, that's really critical because it's like so often we think that they're not listening and they're always listening.
Yeah. I remember my father, um, he had this car. He bought this used car when I was a kid. It was cool. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a Ford Thunderbird. It was from the '60s, but it was beautiful. And we were driving, and I just thought I was really cool riding in this car. I wanted to be seen by everybody, and I think my dad had just bought it as a car. It just happened to be cool. But anyway, we're in the parking lot of the grocery store, and he's backing out. This young woman's backing out at the same time. She backs right into him. Okay, so I'm livid. Okay, I'm 10. I'm mad. And so I'm thinking, okay, Dad, let her have this. Your opportunity. Gets out of the car, and I see him talking to her, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it seemed kind of chill, and got back in the car, and I said, so? And he said, well, I just said to her, I said, yeah, it could happen to anybody. It's only a car. And I was so mad at him. He let her off the hook. And I think it took me perhaps 2 decades for that to bubble around in my head and for me to realize the magnitude of what he had just done. Extended grace to this woman. And I remember looking back and she was crying. She was just beside herself.
Oh.
And it had an impact on me. Now I'm not suggesting we have to do that every time we get in an accident. Sometimes it's important to exchange information and get the thing fixed, right? So, but the whole idea is, are your kids, whenever possible, seeing you demonstrate grace towards other people?
I'm just letting that sink in.
Yeah.
That's a very good lesson. And one of the things that I appreciate about that too is it makes us better people.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it does. It's costly though. It really is costly. In that, yeah, he drove a car around, had a little dent in the fender for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That cost him something.
Yeah.
But usually things that are free aren't that valuable.
True.
So easy to talk about this stuff, to do it. That's a whole other thing, right?
Yeah.
And none of us are perfect at doing that. These are the ideals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I find too, is that when I was in Barry's class, my son was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years old. And one of the favorite things, I brought up something about a power struggle with my kids. And I said, so I need some answers here. And he's like, okay, shut up, shut up, shut up. I was like,
yeah. It's like, I have a friend, he's about 90 years old, one of the wisest people I know. He said, here's he's always giving me advice, and because I usually ask him for it, that's why he gives it to me. He says, well, you just say this to yourself. We're talking about power struggle. I was in with one of my kids. He says, well, just say this to yourself. I said, okay, what is it? He says, if you don't want to mess, say less. That's it.
I like that. That's a good saying. That's a good bumper sticker.
It's an Oklahoma thing, I think. It's got that rural Oklahoma feel. Good folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a deep truth articulated in a folksy way.
Right. It kind of brings me to today, where we've got a candidate that says, mind your own damn business. kind of in that same vein. Well, one of the things that I work with a lot with clients has to do with mindset.
Yeah.
And we talk an awful lot about that because I feel like if they're not in the right mindset, it's going to be hard to parent. It's going to be hard to job search. It's going to be hard to do anything. So the reason that I wanted to bring that up is because I am really looking forward to your new book that's coming out that you wrote with Dr. Amen, Raising Mentally Strong Kids. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Give us a little spoiler alert.
Oh, well, that book combines the basic down to earth practical skills of love and logic with Daniel's great work on neuroscience. He's a neuroscientist, child psychiatrist. And so we look at how the brain works, how to keep the brain healthy, or if it's not healthy, simple things that we could do with our kids, for our kids, that will help them have stronger brains. But we also pull in the love and logic, because when kids are owning and solving problems, what that is, that's a gym. A workout spot for the brain is solving problems. So if we want our kids to have strong brains, they need to be doing a lot of thinking and problem solving.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, one of the fruits of love and logic that we have found as a family is that my younger son is utilizing kind of the way that we worked with him growing up. There was never any, I wasn't screaming at him if he made a mistake or anything like that. We really tried to implement, the 4-step model. And now when he's at work, if he makes a mistake, he goes, I made a mistake on this. What do I need to do to put this back in order? And people are like, wait, you're admitting you made a mistake?
Right. Because he's got some humility. See,
exactly.
humility is the basic core of the healthy, productive mindset. And the healthy, productive mindset it goes like this. Success is not based on my brilliance. It's not based on my ability to be perfect. Success is based on how hard I'm willing to work, how many problems I'm willing to solve, and whether I'm willing to pick myself back up after I've messed up as many times as it takes. And so I want to insert something in. It's really important to me. Can I do that?
Please. Yeah, please.
I can't stand people who come across as perfect. That's kind of hard to take. I was pretty strong in that saying, but one of the things I don't want parents to feel like is that they have to be perfect to raise great kids. I don't want parents listening to me or reading any of my books and think, wow, I could never be that perfect. It just sounds like you have to be so perfect to be successful with your kids. That I would be grieved to the core if I left people feeling that way. See, the good news again is that you don't have to be perfect. You're never going to get there anyway. None of us are. But I got to thinking, what are the chances, Ari, that our kids are going to grow up to be imperfect people? What are the chances they're imperfect right now? I mean, is there any possibility that our children are not perfect? Okay. So they're imperfect people who are going to have to figure out how to live in an imperfect world, right? Does that make sense? That's logic.
Yes.
Okay. Who better to show an imperfect person how to live in an imperfect world than somebody who is chronically imperfect?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And
yeah. I mean, we need imperfect people showing us that imperfect people can be successful.
Right. And it's successful, but I think that it's also, making life enjoyable and comfortable and fun, all of those pieces, because when I'm talking with people, I was talking with a friend the other day who was putting together a birthday party for her 5-year-old. And she was like, and she's a perfectionist. She doesn't think that she's perfect, but she wants to be perfect. So she's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I want to make sure everything goes really smoothly. So I've got everything planned out and she's like going through the whole thing and all of the stuff that she's done. And I just kind of reminded her, I said, you know what, though? What I find is that the events and the things that I really enjoy, it's not that it was perfect. It's just that like they kind of rolled with the imperfections. And it was like, oh, somebody forgot to deliver the cake, okay, well, I got donuts left inside. Let's stick a candle in one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just fun. But if you feel like everything has to be perfect, it just creates this environment of tension for everybody
Oh,
around you.
yeah. It's so tense. It's so tense, right? Yeah. The best holiday meals were the ones where the main course got burnt and somebody was able to laugh about it instead of get angry, and we all ate something that maybe wasn't what was planned, right? Those are the best meals. So again, people are more important than stuff. I
Yes.
sum that up. And so people are more important than stuff.
I like that. I like that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't touch on? I feel like we covered so much, but I'm sure that there is so much more.
Well, thank you for asking. I don't have anything at this point, but if you ask me to come back, I'd be happy to hang out with you. It was fun talking to you. I hope
Thank
this was
you.
helpful. I hope this was helpful to those you who are listening. I'm so thankful to you, listeners, viewers, for taking the time, making the investment to hang out with us. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Fay, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show today. It's just wonderful to see you again. And I feel like Love and Logic has been a part of my life for so long. It's just so important. And I appreciate all of the work that you're doing to make the world really a better place for parents, for teachers, and for children, especially. So
Well,
thank you
thank
so
you.
much for being here.
You're welcome.
And thank you to my listeners for joining us today. And please check out Love and Logic Institute for some fantastic resources, regardless of your child's age. And I'll see you next time. Until then, remember to give yourself grace. And I will use Dr. Fay's words and say, extend grace to others. Thank you so much.